The Grand Assembly Hall of the Galactic Coalition was the largest structure ever built in known space. It stretched across 3 kilometers of orbital station, floating silently above a dead moon that had been chosen specifically because no species had any claim to it. Today, delegates from 47 spacefaring species had gathered for what was supposed to be a routine diplomatic session. Nobody expected what was about to happen. General of the Empire stood at the center podium. He was an impressive figure even by alien standards. His body was covered in black chitinous armor that gleamed under the artificial lights. 4 muscular arms extended from his torso, each one ending in claws that could tear through metal. His eyes, 6 of them arranged in 2 rows of 3, scanned the assembly with obvious contempt. They had been at war with a smaller species called the for almost 3 years now. They had requested military support from the Coalition, and specifically from Earth. The humans had refused. They had sent food and medicine and offered to help negotiate peace, but they would not send soldiers. This made very angry. The humans refused to commit their forces to the border conflict, he announced. His voice was deep and harsh, like rocks grinding together. They send diplomats, they send supplies, but they're warriors. They hide behind their little blue planet like frightened larvae. A murmur went through the assembly. Several delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The ambassador, a being made of living crystal that caught the light in beautiful patterns, leaned toward her aide and whispered something. The smaller creature's internal lights flickered nervously in response. Ambassador of Earth stood at the human delegation's platform. She was a woman in her late 50s with silver hair pulled back in a simple style. Her face showed no emotion as she listened to the insult. She had been a diplomat for 30 years. She had heard worse. "General," she replied, her voice calm and steady, "humanity does not believe this conflict requires our military involvement. We have offered humanitarian aid and mediation services. We believe peace is possible if both sides are willing to negotiate." His mandibles clicked together rapidly. This was the equivalent of mocking laughter. "Cowards," he said. "All of you humans are cowards. The mighty human race, who conquered their own solar system in merely 2 centuries, now trembles at the thought of real combat. Perhaps the stories of human ferocity were greatly exaggerated. Perhaps humans are nothing more than clever prey animals who learn to use tools." The assembly erupted into noise. Some delegates shouted in protest. Others laughed along with the delegation. The mercenary clans, who respected only strength, watched with keen interest to see how the humans would respond. Waited for the noise to die down. Then she smiled. It was not a warm smile. It was not a friendly smile. It was the kind of smile that made several nearby delegates suddenly feel very cold. "General," she said, "humanity has avoided galactic conflicts not out of fear but out of restraint. We know what we are capable of. We have spent our entire history proving it to ourselves. However, if the Empire truly wishes to see what a human soldier is capable of, we would be happy to provide a demonstration." Leaned forward with interest. "A demonstration? By all means, Ambassador. Send your armies, send your fleets. We will crush them as we have crushed the resistance. They have never lost a war in 15,000 years of recorded history." "No armies," said. Her voice was quiet, but it carried across the entire assembly hall. "No fleets. I propose something much simpler. Your finest warriors against one human soldier. A single combatant, just one." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the environmental system seemed to hold their breath. "If our soldier falls," continued, "Earth will commit full military support to whatever campaign you choose. We will fight wherever you point us, for as long as you require. But if our soldier succeeds, the Empire will withdraw from the disputed territories and recognize independence." Stared at her. His 6 eyes blinked in sequence, which among his species indicated extreme confusion. "One soldier. You would stake your species' honor on one soldier. against the finest warriors the Empire has ever produced. We would. The general threw back his head and laughed. The sound echoed through the assembly hall like thunder. His entire delegation joined in, their mandibles clicking in unified mockery. "Then I accept," said when he had regained his composure. "I accept with the greatest pleasure. Bring your champion to the neutral grounds of a prime in 3 standard cycles. We shall see how quickly human courage turns to human screaming. We shall see how your single soldier faces the might of a battle lord." Nodded once. "The terms are agreed, 3 standard cycles, a prime, traditional combat rules." "Traditional rules," confirmed. "Both combatants enter with only what they carry. No energy weapons, no explosives, bladed weapons and hand-to-hand combat only. The fight continues until one combatant yields or dies." "Agreed." The assembly began to break up, delegates hurrying to contact their governments with news of the extraordinary challenge. Betting pools were already being established. The early odds ran roughly 3,000 to 1 against the human. As the crowd dispersed, the ambassador approached, the crystalline being moved with a grace that made her seem to float rather than walk. Her internal lights pulsed with colors that indicated deep concern. "You have doomed your people," they said quietly. "They have never lost a formal combat challenge. Never, in 15,000 years. Their battle lords trained from birth for nothing else. They are living weapons." Looked at her with that same cold smile. "So are we." You cannot seriously believe one human can defeat a battle lord. They are 8 feet tall. They have 4 arms. Their exoskeletons can withstand small arms fire. They have been perfecting the art of killing for longer than your species has existed. And yet, said, humans still exist. We have faced predators larger than ourselves since we climbed down from the trees. We have faced enemies with better weapons, better armor, greater numbers. We have faced extinction itself more than once. We are still here. She began walking toward the exit, then paused and looked back at the. "There is something you should understand about humanity, Ambassador. We do not fight because we are strong. We fight because we refuse to accept defeat. We find ways to win when winning should be impossible. It is what we do. It is what we have always done." The lights flickered uncertainly. "And you believe one soldier can embody all of that?" "I know he can," said, "because I have already chosen him." She walked out of the assembly hall, leaving the crystalline ambassador to wonder what kind of being could possibly justify such confidence. Across the galaxy, similar questions were being asked. News of the challenge spread at the speed of light, carried by countless communication networks to billions of watching eyes. Everyone wanted to know the same thing. Who was this human champion? What kind of soldier could possibly face a battle lord alone and expect to survive? They would find out soon enough. The mountains of Montana had not changed much in the past 100 years. The same peaks reached toward the same sky. The same forests covered the same valleys. The same rivers cut through the same rocks on their way to the same seas. It was a place where a man could forget that humanity had spread to the stars. It was a place where a man could find peace. Danny had been looking for peace for a long time. He sat in a folding chair on the porch of his small cabin, watching the sun sink behind the western peaks. A bottle of beer rested in his hand, half empty and growing warm. He was 43 years old, though he looked older. His face was weathered and lined, marked by years of exposure to harsh conditions in harsh places. His body was still strong, built like a man who had spent decades carrying heavy loads through difficult terrain, but it carried the accumulated damage of a lifetime of violence. His right knee ached when it rained. His left shoulder clicked when he raised his arm above his head. There was a scar on his abdomen where a piece of shrapnel had nearly ended his life in a desert on the other side of the world. There were other scars, dozens of them, each one a memory he preferred not to revisit. Danny had been watching the news. He had seen the broadcast from the Galactic Coalition Assembly. He had watched Ambassador accept the challenge. He had heard her promise that one human soldier would face the alien champion. He knew why the black government vehicle was pulling up his gravel driveway before it even came to a stop. A woman stepped out. She was wearing a military dress uniform with the insignia of a full colonel. Her nameplate read. She was younger than Danny, maybe mid-30s, with the kind of posture that suggested she had spent her entire adult life in uniform. She walked up to his porch with careful, measured steps. "Sergeant," she said. "Colonel, may I sit?" He gestured to the empty chair beside him. She sat down, her back straight, her hands folded in her lap. For a moment, neither of them spoke. They just watched the sunset together. "I assume you know why I am here," Colonel said finally. "You need someone to fight aliens." Danny took a sip of his beer. "I figured you would go with someone younger, someone still on active duty, someone who has not been out of the game for 5 years." We considered it, pulled out a tablet computer and scrolled through its contents. The Joint Chiefs spent 72 hours reviewing every special operations soldier we have. Active duty, reserves, retired, every branch of service, every unit with a combat record. They kept coming back to the same name. Your name. Danny shook his head slowly. "I am nobody special, Colonel, just a soldier who got lucky more times than he deserved." Looked at her tablet. Operation Silent Thunder, 2031. You held a defensive position alone for 18 hours against a force that outnumbered you 40-1. When reinforcements finally arrived, they found you surrounded by enemy dead. You had run out of ammunition 12 hours earlier. "I got lucky." Operation Black Frost, 2034. You extracted a captured intelligence team from a fortified compound in hostile territory. Your weapons malfunctioned during insertion. You completed the mission using only a knife and your bare hands. All 5 team members survived. 17 enemy combatants did not. They made mistakes. The Tehran Incident, 2037. Paused. That operation is classified so heavily that I needed presidential authorization just to read the summary, and that summary gave me nightmares for a week. Danny said nothing. He just stared at the mountains and drank his beer. "You are not just a soldier, Sergeant. You are what happens when human evolution produces something that probably should not exist. Your psychological profile is unlike anything we have ever seen. You do not experience fear the way normal humans do. Your pain tolerance is off the charts, and according to every combat assessment we have, you possess an almost supernatural ability to find ways to win when winning should be impossible. I also have bad knees and a shoulder that clicks when it rains." Almost smiled at that. Almost. "The fate of human diplomatic standing in the galaxy rests on this challenge, Sergeant. If we lose, we commit our entire military to whatever conflict they choose. We become their attack dogs, but if we win, we establish humanity as a species that cannot be bullied or dismissed. We earn respect." Respect. Danny turned the word over in his mouth like he was tasting it. "That is a nice idea." "It is more than an idea. It is survival. The galaxy is a dangerous place. We have been lucky so far. We have avoided the wars that consume other species, but that luck will not last forever. Sooner or later, someone will come for Earth. When that day comes, we need allies. We need the other species to see us as equals, not as prey." Danny finished his beer and set the empty bottle on the porch railing. The sun had disappeared behind the mountains now. The sky was turning purple and orange, the colors bleeding together like a wound. "What am I fighting?" he asked. "We do not know exactly. They are keeping their champion secret, but intelligence suggests they will send their best, probably a battle lord named. He is considered the finest warrior in the Empire. 8 feet tall, 4 arms, exoskeleton that can stop bullets, and 15,000 years of combat tradition bred into his genes. Weapons. Traditional rules. Both combatants enter with only what they carry. No guns, no energy weapons, no explosives. Bladed weapons and hand-to-hand only. The fight continues until one of you yields or dies. Danny nodded slowly. He looked at his hands. They were rough and the hands of a man who had done terrible things in the service of his country. He had thought he was done with all that. He had thought he could spend his remaining years watching sunsets and drinking beer and trying to forget. But some men are not built for peace. Some men are built for something else entirely. "When do we leave?" Danny asked. Blinked in surprise. "You are agreeing, just like that. You do not want time to think about it. You do not want to discuss terms or conditions. You came all this way, Colonel. Seems rude to say no." He stood up from his chair, his joints popping and cracking. "Besides, I have been bored. Retirement is not as peaceful as they make it sound in the brochures. The transport leaves tomorrow morning. You will have 2.5 days to prepare." Danny walked to the door of his cabin, then paused. "One condition." "Name it." "I choose my own equipment. No fancy armor, no experimental weapons, no technology I have not trained with. Just what I know, just what I trust." Nodded, agreed. "What will you need?" Danny thought about it for a moment. Then he smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "A knife," he said, "just a knife." He went inside to pack, remained on the porch staring at the darkening sky. She had read his file a dozen times. She had seen the reports, the assessments, the classified summaries. She knew exactly what Danny was capable of. But sitting here, watching him accept a mission that would terrify any normal person with nothing more than mild interest, she realized that the files did not capture the truth. They could not capture the truth. The truth was something you had to see with your own eyes to believe. Somewhere out there, a battle lord was preparing for the greatest fight of his life. He was sharpening his blades, practicing his techniques, dreaming of glory. He had no idea what was coming for him. A prime was a dead world. Its atmosphere had burned away millions of years ago. Its oceans had evaporated into space. Its surface was nothing but rock and black sand, stretching endlessly under a sky full of unfamiliar stars. It had been chosen as neutral ground precisely because no species wanted it. No one would fight over a corpse. The neutral grounds arena had been carved into a basalt plateau thousands of years ago by a species that no longer existed. Nobody remembered who they were or what had happened to them. Only the arena remained, a perfect circle of smooth stone surrounded by tiered seating that rose up like the inside of a bowl. It could hold 100,000 spectators. Today, every seat was filled. Representatives from every major galactic power had come to witness the challenge. The delegation occupied the largest section, their black armor gleaming under portable lights. The sat in crystalline clusters, their bodies catching and refracting the light in patterns that shifted with their emotions. The mercenaries had come in force, eager to see combat between worthy opponents. Even the reclusive had sent observers, their pale forms hidden beneath hooded robes. Holographic cameras floated throughout the arena, capturing every angle. The fight would be broadcast across known space. Billions of beings on thousands of worlds were watching. Danny stood at the entrance to the arena floor. He was wearing simple military fatigues, olive green and well-worn. His feet were in combat boots he had owned for 15 years. His hands were bare. At his belt hung a standard military combat knife, 7 inches of steel that he had carried through more missions than he could count. Around his left forearm, a length of was wrapped neatly. That was all. No armor, no helmet, no backup weapons. Colonel stood beside him, and Danny could see that she was trying very hard not to look nervous. She was failing. "You are sure you do not want the armor we offered?" she asked. "The enhanced gear. We have technology that could give you an advantage." "Armor slows me down," Danny said. He was rolling his shoulders, loosening up the muscles, getting his body ready. "And I do not trust gear I have not trained with. In a fight like this, A piece of equipment you do not understand can get you killed faster than no equipment at all. The champion will have armor, natural armor that can stop bullets. Good for him. Shook her head. I do not understand how you can be so calm. Danny looked at her. His eyes were flat and like the surface of the dead world around them. Fear is a tool, Colonel, like anger, like pain. You learn to use them or they use you. I learned a long time ago. Across the arena, the entrance opened. The crowd erupted into cheering and stomping, a wall of sound that shook the ancient stone. Battlelord emerged from the darkness and strode onto the arena floor. He was everything the intelligence reports had promised and more. 8 feet tall, his body was covered in black chitinous armor that looked like it had been carved from volcanic glass. 4 arms extended from his torso, each one thick with muscle, each one ending in claws that could shear through steel plate. He carried 2 curved blades, one in each upper hand. The blades were nearly as long as Danny was tall, their edges gleaming with cruel sharpness. Looked across the arena at his opponent. His 6 eyes narrowed. His mandibles clicked in what might have been laughter or disbelief. This is the human champion, he bellowed. His voice was deep enough to feel in your chest. This small, soft creature, I have killed vermin larger than this. The sections of the crowd roared with appreciation. Some of the other species joined in, caught up in the moment. Danny walked to the center of the arena. His footsteps were unhurried, almost casual. He stopped 20 feet from and looked up at the massive alien warrior without any expression on his face. You talk a lot, he said. The ceremonial gong sounded, a single deep note that rang across the arena and silenced the crowd. The fight had begun. Attacked with a speed that seemed impossible for something so large. His blades came down in a crossing pattern, a technique designed to catch an opponent between them and cut them into pieces. It was a killing stroke that had ended hundreds of fights in the Battlelord's long career. Danny was not there. He had moved the instant the gong sounded, not backward as most opponents would, forward and to the side, sliding under the arc of the descending blades. He moved like water flowing around a stone, smooth and inevitable. His knife flicked out as he passed. A thin line of dark ichor appeared on the back of his lower left knee, in the gap between armor plates where the joint needed flexibility to move. It was not a deep cut. It did not need to be deep. Stumbled just slightly, just for a moment. Danny was already gone, circling around behind the Battlelord, staying in the one place that's 4-armed fighting style was weakest. It was a blind spot that they did not know they had. Danny knew it because he had spent the entire journey to a prime studying holographic recordings of combat techniques. He had watched hundreds of hours of footage. He had found the weakness. You are favoring your back leg now, Danny said. His voice was calm, conversational. Compensating for the cut. That means your upper right swing is about half a second slower than it should be. Roared and spun, his blades carving furrows in the stone floor. Danny danced through the attack like he had choreographed it himself, his knife finding another joint, another gap, another thin trickle of ichor. The crowd had gone completely silent. What followed was not a battle, not in any traditional sense. It was a systematic dismantling. Danny did not fight with rage or desperation or any of the emotions that usually drove warriors in combat. He fought with the cold, methodical precision of a surgeon removing a tumor. He never tried to overpower his opponent. That would have been stupid, was stronger than any human could ever be. Instead, Danny used the Battlelord's strength against him. Every swing of those massive blades created openings. Every lunge created vulnerability. Danny found each one and exploited it. Cut by cut, wound by wound. 10 minutes into the fight was bleeding from a dozen wounds. None of them were fatal. All of them were strategic. The tendons of his lower left arm had been severed, leaving it hanging useless. His speed had dropped significantly as ichor loss began to affect his muscles. His breathing was becoming labored. Danny stood in front of him, knife held loosely at his side. He was not even breathing hard. "You are slowing down," Danny observed. "Your reaction time is about 60% of what it was at the start. Your lower arms are almost useless now. You have maybe 5 minutes before you collapse from ichor loss." Stared at him with something that might have been horror. In 15,000 years of history, no battle lord had ever been taken apart so completely, so systematically, so easily. "What are you?" whispered. Danny tilted his head slightly, considering the question. "I am a human," he said. "We are very good at killing things bigger than us. We have had a lot of practice." He moved again, a blur of motion that ended with his knife buried in another joint, screamed and fell to one knee. His remaining functional arms dropped one of his swords. 20 minutes had passed. The greatest warrior of the Empire was on his knees, bleeding from 19 wounds, his body failing him piece by piece. And Danny had not taken a single hit. The arena remained silent. 100,000 beings watched in stunned disbelief. Across the galaxy, billions more stared at their screens with their mouths open. They had come expecting to see a slaughter. They were seeing one, but not the slaughter they had anticipated. Danny stood over his fallen opponent. His knife was red with alien blood. His face showed no triumph, no satisfaction, no emotion at all. "Yield," he said. It was not a request. The word hung in the air like smoke after an explosion. Yield. Such a simple word, such an impossible concept for a battle lord. Knelt on the stone floor of the arena, his ichor pooling beneath him in a spreading dark stain. His body was failing. He could feel it in the weakness of his limbs, in the fog creeping at the edges of his vision, in the cold that was seeping into his core. 19 wounds, each one precise, each one calculated to disable without killing. He looked up at the human standing over him, this small, soft creature who had dismantled him like a child taking apart a toy. There was no anger in the human's eyes, no hatred, no triumph, just a calm, patient waiting. "Do not yield," said. The words came out weak, barely a whisper. "We die in combat, it is our way. It has always been our way." Danny nodded slightly. "If that is what you want, I can end it quickly. You will not suffer." His mandibles clicked, but there was no mockery in the sound now. It was something else, something that might have been respect. "Why?" the battle lord asked. "You could have killed me at any time, I see that now. The speed with which you move, the precision of your strikes. You were never in danger, not for a single moment. So why did you let me live this long? Why draw it out?" Danny considered the question. When he spoke, his voice carried across the silent arena. "Because a dead enemy is forgotten, but a defeated enemy who lives tells stories." He looked up at the stands, at the thousands of faces watching from every corner of the galaxy. "I wanted everyone watching to understand something. I wanted them to see what a human can do." "And what is that?" asked. "Anything necessary." The battle lord was quiet for a long moment. His remaining functional hand released his sword, letting it clatter to the stone. Then, slowly, painfully, he lowered his head. "I yield," he said. The words echoed across the arena like thunder. A gasp went through the crowd. In 15,000 years of recorded history, no battle lord had ever spoken those words. Many had died in combat. Many had fought until their bodies gave out completely. None had ever yielded. Until now. Danny stepped back. He wiped his knife on his fatigues and returned it to its sheath. Then he looked up at the section of the stands where General sat frozen in his seat. The General's 6 eyes were wide. His mandibles hung open. He looked like someone who had just watched everything he believed in crumble to dust. "The challenge is complete," Danny said. His voice was amplified by the arena's ancient systems, carrying to every ear. "The human combatant is victorious. Per the agreed terms, the Empire will withdraw from the disputed territories and recognize independence. Stood slowly. His 4 arms hung limp at his sides. He tried to speak, but no sound came out. For the first time in his long career, the general had nothing to say. Ambassador rose from her seat in the human delegation area. Her silver hair caught the light as she stood, and her face wore an expression of calm satisfaction. "The called humanity cowards," she said. Her voice rang across the arena, clear and strong. "They demanded proof of human courage. They have received it." She paused, letting her words sink in. 100,000 beings leaned forward in their seats. "Let this serve as a lesson to any who would threaten Earth or her allies. We do not seek conflict. We do not desire war. We are not a violent species by choice. But if war is brought to us, if our friends are threatened, if our honor is challenged, we will not send armies. We will not send fleets." She gestured toward Danny, who stood alone in the center of the arena, surrounded by the evidence of his victory. "We will send individuals like Sergeant Danny, and you should know this. We have millions more like him. Millions of men and women who have been forged in the fires of human history, who have learned to fight against impossible odds, who refuse to accept defeat no matter the cost." This was not entirely true. Danny was unique even among human special operators, but the aliens did not need to know that. Let them wonder, let them worry, let them fear. The ambassador rose from her seat, her crystalline form pulsing with colors that indicated deep emotion. "I propose that this day be recorded in the galactic archives as a formal recognition of human martial capability. Furthermore, I propose that humanity be offered a permanent seat on the Coalition Security Council." The vote was taken immediately. It was unanimous. Even the delegation, humiliated and shaken, voted in favor. They understood now. Some enemies were not worth making. Medical teams rushed onto the arena floor to attend to. The Battle Lord would survive his wounds. All 19 of them had been carefully placed to disable but not kill. That had been deliberate. Danny had wanted him alive to tell the story. As the medics worked, Danny walked toward the human delegation's exit. His steps were slow and unhurried, the same casual pace he had maintained throughout the entire fight. Colonel met him at the entrance. "That was the most terrifying thing I have ever witnessed," she said quietly, "and I have seen combat on 3 continents." Danny shrugged. "He was slower than I expected. The exoskeleton limits their flexibility. They compensate with strength and aggression, but that creates predictable patterns. Once you understand the patterns, the rest is just mechanics." "You make it sound simple." "It is simple. That does not mean it is easy." He looked back at the arena where was being lifted onto a medical transport. "He was a good warrior, brave, skilled. In another life I might have respected him. And in this life he was in my way." They walked in silence through the corridors of the orbital station attached to the arena. Other delegations gave them a wide berth. Beings who had been laughing at humanity 3 days ago now pressed themselves against the walls as Danny passed, their eyes wide with fear. In a private medical bay aboard the human diplomatic vessel, doctors examined Danny for injuries. They found none. Not a scratch, not a bruise. The greatest warrior of the Empire had not managed to touch him even once. "Your heart rate barely elevated during the fight," one of the doctors said, studying her instruments with disbelief. "Your cortisol levels are lower now than when you woke up this morning. It is like your body did not even register this as a stressful event." Danny said nothing. He just sat on the examination table and waited for them to finish. When the doctors finally left, came back in, she had changed out of her dress uniform into more practical shipboard clothing. She looked tired. "You could have killed him immediately," she said. "The first strike, that cut to his knee, you could have put the knife somewhere more vital. Why drag it out for 20 minutes? Danny thought about the question for a moment before answering. Fear, he said. Fear is a more effective deterrent than respect. If I had killed him quickly, it would have been impressive. But by taking him apart piece, by showing absolute control over every moment of that fight, I sent a different message. I showed them that a human with a knife is not just dangerous. A human with a knife is inevitable. You cannot run. You cannot hide. You cannot overpower us. We will find your weaknesses and we will exploit them until you fall. He looked at her steadily. By tomorrow, every species in the galaxy will know what happened here. They will tell the story. They will add details. They will make it worse than it was. And the next time someone thinks about threatening humanity, they will remember this day. They will remember what happened to the greatest warrior of the Empire. Stared at him for a long moment. That is terrifying, she said finally. Danny nodded. Yes, he agreed. That is the point. 6 months passed after the challenge on a prime. In that time, the galaxy changed in ways that no one had anticipated. The Empire honored its agreement. Their forces from the disputed territories within weeks of the fight, the who had been losing their war slowly but surely, found themselves suddenly free. They declared independence and began the long process of rebuilding their civilization. But what surprised everyone was what came next. They requested a formal diplomatic exchange with Earth. Ambassadors were traded. Cultural programs were established. Trade agreements were signed. The species that had mocked humanity as cowards became one of their closest allies. It confused many of the other galactic powers. They did not understand how a species could go from such open hostility to such eager friendship in so short a time. But those who knew they understood perfectly. They respected strength. They respected combat ability. And more than anything else, they respected those who could defeat them in honest battle. Himself became one of the strongest advocates for human relations. His scars, all 19 of them, became marks of honor. He wore them proudly and told the story of his defeat to anyone who would listen. The human did not fight with hatred, he would say. He did not fight with anger or fear or desperation. He fought with absolute mastery, every movement precise, every strike calculated. In my entire life, I have never faced an opponent so completely in control. It was like fighting the tide. You can struggle all you want, but the water will find a way through. They became humanity's strongest allies in the coalition. They had recognized something in humans that other species had missed. Ambassador met with the leadership many times in the months following the challenge, building a relationship that would last for generations. Your species solves problems by refusing to acknowledge that they are impossible, the ambassador told her during one of these meetings. When faced with an obstacle, you do not look for a way around it. You look for a way through it. It is both your greatest strength and your most terrifying quality. Smiled at that. We call it stubbornness, or sometimes stupidity, depending on how things turn out. We call it something else, they said. We call it inevitable. Other species took notice of humanity's new status. The grateful for their unexpected freedom, requested human military advisors to help rebuild their defense forces. Earth sent a team of instructors, many of them trained by Danny himself. Within 2 years, they had transformed from a defeated people into a capable fighting force that could defend their borders. The mercenary clans, previously considered the most dangerous fighters in the Outer Rim, quietly adjusted their contracts. Any operation against human interests now carried a surcharge of 300%. Most of their clients decided it was not worth the cost. And in the halls of the Galactic Coalition, when debates grew heated and threats were made, someone would always mention a prime. The arguments usually resolved themselves after that. Danny returned to his porch in Montana. He declined the medals they tried to give him. He declined the interviews. He declined the offers of command positions and advisory roles and speaking engagements. He wanted, he said, to finish his retirement in peace. For a while, that seemed possible. The first black government vehicle arrived 3 months after his return. "Colonel," now carrying the rank of brigadier general, stepped out with a tablet full of intelligence reports about a situation developing near the border of coalition space. Danny listened. He asked questions. He sighed. "Let me get my knife," he said. The second situation came 4 months after that. A diplomatic crisis with the collective that threatened to destabilize an entire sector. The third was an extraction mission deep in hostile territory. The fourth was something classified so heavily that even the people running the operation did not know all the details. Each time General would arrive at his cabin. Each time she would explain the situation. Each time Danny would ask his questions, consider the problem, and reach the same conclusion. "Let me get my knife." He never failed. No matter how impossible the mission seemed, no matter how overwhelming the odds, Danny found a way. He always found a way. That was what he did. That was what he had always done. In between missions, he sat on his porch and watched the mountains. He drank his beer. He tried to find the peace that always seemed to slip through his fingers. Some men are not built for peace. Danny had accepted that about himself a long time ago. But he did not mind. Not really, because he understood something that most people never grasped. The universe was not a safe place. It was not a fair place. It was a place where the strong preyed on the weak, where might made right, where species rose and fell based on their ability to survive. Humanity had spent its entire existence being underestimated. They were small. They were soft. They were short-lived. They had no natural weapons, no armor, no special abilities that other species possessed. By any objective measure, humans were among the weakest intelligent beings in the galaxy. But they had something else. They had Danny and thousands like him, men and women who had been forged in the fires of human history. Soldiers and warriors and survivors who had learned to fight against predators twice their size, against enemies with better technology, against odds that should have been insurmountable. They had the will to keep fighting when fighting seemed hopeless. They had the intelligence to find weaknesses that others could not see. They had the absolute, stubborn refusal to accept defeat no matter what the universe threw at them. General had called them cowards. He had learned his mistake. He would carry that lesson in his memory for the rest of his life. And across the galaxy, in the councils of power and the barracks of warriors and the quiet corners where beings gathered to share stories, a new saying spread. It was spoken in whispers. It was spoken in tones of respect and fear and wonder. Never underestimate a human. They only need one. Danny sat on his porch and watched the sun set behind the mountains of Montana. His knife rested on the small table beside him, cleaned and sharpened and ready for the next time it would be needed. His beer was cold in his hand. The evening air smelled of pine and possibility. Somewhere out there, among the stars, trouble was brewing. It always was. Sooner or later, another black vehicle would pull up his driveway. Another impossible situation would require his particular set of skills. Another enemy would learn the lesson that so many had learned before. Danny did not mind. He would answer the call when it came. He would do what needed to be done. He would remind the galaxy, once again, why humanity should never be underestimated. Because that was who he was. That was who they all were. Human.